against a cell wall. Amnesty International has called for a thorough and independent investigation surrounding Zhuang's death. The United Nations says there are nearly 138 million children child labour by 2025 has been missed. The BBC's Max Hubbury.
More than 1 in every 12 children work. This represents, the United Nations say, an improvement, but it still means that 138 million children aged between 5 to 17 work. Nearly 40% of those children have been risking their health, working in mines, factories or fields. Sub-Saharan Africa has the highest number of child labourers, while most progress has been made in the Asia-Pacific region.
Recapping on your top stories, at least 8 bodies have been recovered after a school bus was swept away by floods near Umtata in South Africa's Eastern Cape province. 3 children were rescued from the bus. South Africa has been lashed by heavy rains and snow since the weekend in a severe winter cold front which disrupted transport and power networks. For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Manchester City have confirmed the signing of AC Milan midfielder Tijani Reinders for an initial fee of about $56.5 million. And we'll also get an update on the ticket sales from the FIFA Club World Cup. Details of these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Good afternoon to you, Burundi. Good afternoon, Senegal, Sudan. Good afternoon, Ghana, Angola, Chad. Good afternoon, Kenya, Namibia. Good afternoon, Africa. Welcome to Africa in Business on Channel Africa. I'm Thami Ngubeni. This is where you get the African perspective. It's where we meet to look at the latest in news, sport and business. We are broadcasting live from our studios in Johannesburg, South Africa. You can catch us on the DSTV audio bouquet, channel 802, on OpenView on channel 628. You can live stream us on www.channelafrica.co.za and listen to us on the SABC Plus app, which is available on the Google and Apple Play stores. YouTube is also another medium you can use to watch and listen to our live broadcast. On X, you'll find us at Channel Africa 1, as well as on Instagram, and on Facebook we are at Channel Africa. A very good afternoon to you, Africa. Coming up, your latest from the world of business on the African continent.
Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
We start here this afternoon with a look at Transnet. The General Manager of Transnet Manufacturing and Ports in South Africa, Mr. Tshwanelo Tswai, says Transnet Engineering is playing a critical role in driving Africa's industrialization agenda, with a strong focus on regional collaboration and localized manufacturing. He made these remarks during a media tour hosted by Transnet Engineering in the city of Cape Town. The tour also highlighted potential export opportunities, cross-border partnerships, as well as prospects for job creation. Channel Africa's business reporter, Innocent Samosa, was there and filed this report.
Operational efficiencies, financial strain, competitive pressures, and capacity constraints. These are just some of the pressing challenges facing Transnet today. In Cape Town, General Manager of Transnet Manufacturing and Ports, Mr. Tshwanelo Tswai, addressed members of the media. He emphasized that while Transnet continue to working towards profitability, vandalism of infrastructure remains a significant obstacle.
Well, vandalism, I think it's a country problem currently. We looking at many different ways in terms of, let's say, for instance, we have as a plant, there could be people coming under always, the water storm drains coming into our plants. In Kudesport, they do the same. Ours is to make sure that the security is in order and we make sure that we protect the employees as such.
I asked him whether the support from National Treasury aligns with Transnet's turnaround strategy. Here's what he had to say.
The role of TE, it's always been clear. Let's say, for instance, in terms of the budget, the market, if in case they advertise any tender, they come with their own budget, and they will then, we tender into the work, we then do the work and sell to them. Now, in that, we then create employment, where when we get the tender, we then employ more people into our manufacturing space and making sure that we deliver that work on time. So it does mean that we do create job opportunities.
Colette Diende, Chief Procurement Officer at Transnet Engineering, says the entity's broader vision is to position itself as a leading African powerhouse in engineering and manufacturing.
True, but also if you talk about the region, maybe let's start with South Africa. From a skills perspective, right? So we're enhancing the skills that exist and some that may have been lost. So it's safe to say a lot happened because of COVID and other challenges in the economy, whether local or international. But with this, we are now saying that we want to, from a port perspective, right? We also want to diversify and move out of South Africa into the region. But you first have to prove yourself, and I think we've done exactly that. From a rolling stock maintenance and rolling stock manufacturing, I think there it's a no-brainer, right? We've always been open for business, and we'll continue to be open for business.
As Transnet navigates these challenging times, its leadership says it remains committed to restoring operational efficiency and building a stronger, more resilient entity. For Channel Africa News, I am Innocent Samosa in Cape Town, South Africa.
Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
It is exactly 11 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time as we turn our focus now to minerals on the African continent, and perhaps to be more specific, Zimbabwe. Now, we do know that Zimbabwe has the largest lithium reserves on the African continent, around 480,000 tons of lithium and over 10 million tons of ore. And this is at the Bikita mine alone. What the Zimbabwe government has done now is that it says it intends to ban the export of lithium concentrates, and this would be effective from January 2027. This is part of the country's efforts to push foreign mining companies to establish processing and refining facilities within the country. In 2022, Zimbabwe banned the export of unprocessed lithium ore, and since then, only lithium concentrates have been permitted for export. For more on this, we joined this afternoon by development economist Dr. Prosper Chitambara. A very good afternoon to you, Dr. Chitambara. Good to have you with us on Africa in Business. Perhaps let's start first with what your thoughts are on the ban on the export of lithium concentrates, which will be effective from the year 2027. Do you think it will achieve what the government is hoping to achieve, what the government is pushing for?
Yeah, definitely, I think so. So government has articulated a beneficiation policy across the economy, of course, also targeting the mining sector. So it's part of the Vision 2030, which seeks to make Zimbabwe an upper middle income economy by 2030. So the issue of beneficiation is a key part of that. So I think it's a very strategic move by the government, which will contribute to even enhancing our industrial capacity, our manufacturing capacity as an economy, and that's critical in terms of increasing incomes in the country, and ultimately ensuring that we achieve the vision of being an upper middle income economy by 2030. So I think there are a whole lot of benefits that we stand to benefit from such a strategic move. And of course, government has been consulting with the players to in coming up with the roadmap, the beneficiation roadmap. So I'd say this is something that has not been like dictated by government, but I think it's a move that's been that has involved a lot of consultations between the government and the players within the lithium value chain or within the lithium subsector.
This is not the first furrow, Doctor, into this particular outcome and plan and strategy that Zimbabwe has. In 2022, the export of unprocessed lithium ore was banned by the Zimbabwean government. Did this have any positive impact on the economy of Zimbabwe?
Well, I think there are a whole lot of factors that you then need to consider. Yes, I believe the mining sector generally has been doing very well. It's been one of the mainstays of our economy in terms of, say, for example, contribution to foreign currency earnings. So the mining sector is the biggest foreign currency earner. We've also attracted significant investments within the mining sector, and in particular within the lithium subsector. So yes, we've seen an increase in investments in the mining sector and in lithium, but also we've also seen increase in mining foreign currency earnings into the economy, and that's critical in terms of ensuring there's macroeconomic sustainability and stability going forward. But of course, there are all other factors, obviously, that are militating against the full realization of potential, and even within the mining sector itself, when you have to consider things to do with, for example, electricity. We have a serious energy gap, energy deficit. So we'd want to see government do a lot more in terms of investing, and also even partnering with the private sector to invest in the energy sector, because that's one of the biggest enablers to doing business in any economy. So I think if we can sort out some of those broader doing business constraints, then I think would be good.
And what has the reaction been from the various mining companies? We do know that the sector is largely dominated by the Chinese, yes.
No, definitely. I think they've generally been supportive of the move. Of course, they had requested government to give them a bit of time to come up with realistic roadmaps. But most of the investors are on the same page with government. They support the plan. So I think that makes it easier for everyone involved. But the government has also been, in my view, willing to engage with them and also to listen and try to come up with a roadmap that's also favorable to the investors, to the miners.
And could this ban, Doctor, make Zimbabwe perhaps less competitive in comparison to other lithium exporting countries? I'm thinking of the likes of Australia and Chile as well. What are the other potential unintended economic consequences of this move?
Well, I don't see how it will affect our competitive. Maybe in the short term it could, yeah. But eventually, I think the idea is to enhance competitiveness within the sector. So yeah, there could be some trade-offs in the short term, but I think eventually it should be very, very beneficial in terms of enhancing competitiveness within the whole mining value chain.
Dr. Prosper Chitambara, development economist, we thank you very much for weighing in on the latest developments coming out of Zimbabwe's mining industry. We thank you for your time, sir.
Thanks for having me.
He takes us to exactly 18 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African Time. This is Africa in Business.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine, weekdays 6 till 9.
In recent weeks, East Africa has seen a disturbing rise in human rights violations. In Kenya, digital activist Rose Njeri was arrested under the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act after creating a tool for citizens to oppose the Finance Bill 2025. Meanwhile, in Tanzania, Kenyan activist Boniface Mwangi and Ugandan lawyer Agatha Atuhaire reported being detained, tortured, and sexually assaulted by security officers.
East Africa needs a reset. We need to get back East Africa to where the founding fathers are. When President Nyerere and his colleagues, Jomo Kenyatta and the Ugandan counterparts fought for independence. They fought for independence to get Africans out of poverty, to get Africans out of slavery. The leaders who took up power have since gotten into regression.
Neto Agostino, co-leader of the United Green Movement Party.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Africa in Business. Africa in Business delivers key insights and real-time updates on Africa's growing markets with Thami Ngubeni. The African Perspective on Channel Africa.
Channel Africa.
It is exactly 20 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African Time. Really interested in our next conversation. It's a topic all around golden handshakes, and executives would know this all too well. So what exactly are golden handshakes? They are mutual separation agreements that are very much common practice, especially where there is a breakdown in the relationship between a board and its executives, or between ordinary employees and executives. There are payouts to an employee, mostly at the executive level, who retires early or is made redundant, for example, owing to restructuring, a merger, or even an acquisition. Given the complexity of these golden handshakes, the question we're asking this afternoon is how can companies navigate the legal framework surrounding golden handshakes? For this conversation, to find out how they work, what works and what doesn't work when it comes to golden handshakes, we're joined by Faith Mashapa, a legal advisor at Strategy Labour Solutions. A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
So golden handshakes are pretty much commonplace. Do they ordinarily form a part of one's employment contract right from the get-go?
Not necessarily, but you can negotiate to have agreements that stipulate how a golden handshake would work within the formulation of your contract of employment. But it's not always included in a contract of employment from inception.
And what would one say is the desired outcome from a golden handshake? What is it really supposed to achieve?
So ultimately, the whole purpose of a golden handshake or a mutual separation agreement is to ensure that we sever the relationship, the employment relationship that is, on amicable terms. So we have agreed that we no longer want to continue this employment relationship, and instead of going the lengthy route of perhaps going through a disciplinary inquiry or a retrenchment process, we then sit and agree to terminate this relationship on mutually agreeable terms.
So would these then manifest themselves in lump sum payments, stock options, shares? What forms can the payout take?
So it can take any form. It can be a lump sum payment. It can be a structured payment that takes place over a number of weeks or months, or it can be within shares within the business. So it ultimately depends on what the parties ultimately end up deciding to agree on.
And what role do employment contracts and collective bargaining agreements play in shaping the terms and conditions of golden handshakes?
So employment contracts and collective bargaining agreements don't, for the most part, play any role in shaping the terms and conditions of a golden handshake. However, they can play an important role. As I said earlier, if we are agreeing at the beginning of our relationship how we might enter into a mutual separation agreement, we can then set out the terms, which means we can then decide which circumstances would we then enter into an MSA, or which circumstances one would not enter into a golden handshake. However, in terms of collective bargaining agreements, that one would be a little bit difficult because they are usually industry specific. So it might be very difficult to regulate in an entire industry through a collective agreement how an MSA would need to be entered into. So it could help with dispute resolution though, but ultimately the terms and conditions of a golden handshake would be determined by the parties who are entering into one.
And could you highlight some of the key laws and regulations that govern golden handshakes in both the public and the private sectors?
So unfortunately, there aren't any laws at the moment that are set in place to govern a golden handshake. So what we would then have to do is ensure, because a mutual separation agreement is ultimately a contract that is entered into between two parties, we would then need to make sure that that contract complies with the laws stipulated in terms of contract law, which then sets out what we would need to comply with in order to have a valid agreement put in place. So ultimately, specifically relating to golden handshakes and mutual separation agreements, there aren't any specific laws that look to govern that relationship.
And with that in mind, and the fact that there are no regulations that would govern such mutual separation agreements, what would you highlight as some of the dangers of being in an unregulated space? How can golden handshakes then be taken advantage of and misused?
So ultimately, in a space where there aren't any laws regulating these agreements, what could then happen is that there would be an idea of abuse, right? Especially if no one knows the circumstances that led to someone entering into this agreement. So what would be great for companies and individuals to take into note, even the public sector, is to make sure that they are doing all of these to make in a way that benefits not only the company but the employees themselves. So you don't want this to be used as almost a reward for bad behavior. You want to make sure that we are entering into an agreement with the purposes of ending the employment relationship for whatever reason that came up that then rendered that relationship intolerable.
That point that you made there towards the end about this not being seen as rewarding, bad behavior or mismanagement or failure, that also being a very important part of this. As we wrap up, there's also another phrase, golden parachutes. But a golden parachute is very different from a golden handshake. Could you take us through the distinctions of the two?
So in terms of the golden handshake, we are now sitting together and we are saying this relationship is no longer one that is amicable. We aren't getting along anymore. So we now need to sit together and find a way to terminate this relationship on the terms and conditions that are mutually beneficial for both parties. A golden parachute, for example, would be someone who would have set aside whatever means they would have had necessary to then ultimately jump out of a plane and rescue themselves. That would be the high-level summary of what these two things are.
All right, we'll leave it at that for this afternoon, Faith. But before I let you go, we've spoken about South Africa and the lack of regulation regarding that. Are you aware of how other countries on the continent deal with golden handshakes? Do they have the regulations in place that will allow these to happen within a regulated environment?
So ultimately, within the continent, what generally happens is that there's a general law that deals with how you would enter into agreements. There is an understanding that legislation and legislature doesn't want to be so restrictive in how parties can enter into agreements. So it gives you the freedom to then decide how you're going to enter into an agreement. The only parameter that would then be set is to make sure that whatever agreement you're entering into does not then make you do something that would be considered against the law or illegal. So that is generally what the parameters are. I'm sure there is space for us to then develop more restrictive laws to allow us to then ensure that there isn't an abuse of the golden handshake.
In some instances, it really is used to attract top talent to your company. But the flip side of that is that when it is time to part ways, this can be financially burdensome for the company itself. How are investors and even other employees then affected by this?
So ultimately, when a decision is made to enter into a golden handshake agreement, what would then happen is that all the parties would then be able to consult with the relevant stakeholders and finance to make sure that those who are left behind within the company aren't left now suffering because an executive or an employee has now left the business and has left with a significant amount of money that then leaves the business unable to continue running. So these are things that would then be taken into consideration before an agreement is signed and before a payout is ultimately made.
Faith Mashapa, legal advisor at Strategy Labour Solutions, thank you for taking us through the golden handshake. Give yourself a splendid evening further.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you. She takes us to exactly 4:30 p.m. Central African time. Do remember to continue engaging with us on all the various social media platforms. If you have any stories or any topics that you would like to have discussed right here on Africa in Business, stories that you believe would be of interest to our listeners both on the African continent and in the diaspora, do send us your emails to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Perhaps you want to go deeper into golden handshakes, or maybe you want to go deeper into golden parachutes. Whatever topics you find interesting, certainly do let us know, and we will endeavor to bring those to you along with your leading and breaking stories in the world of business. Let's head over now to the markets desk for the latest market indicators with Chanduko Ligege.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Thami, and good afternoon. $1 is trading at 17 rand 71 in South Africa, Botswana 13 pula 21, Namibia 17 Namibian dollars 71, Zambia 25 kwacha to the US dollar. In Kenya, the dollar is at 128 shilling 417, Ethiopia 135 birr 283, Uganda 3,000 shilling 592, Tanzania 2,000 shilling 621. $1 in Nigeria is 1,000 naira 550. Egypt, the dollar is 49 Egyptian pound 52. Tunisia, 2 dinar 94. Algeria, 130 dinar 81. Morocco, the dollar will cost you 90 ram 11. Angola, 912 kwanza. The Congolese franc is 2,853 to the US dollar. Looking at commodities, gold is at $3,348, platinum at $1,263 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil at $67.70 a barrel. That is all from me. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And we head over now to the sports desk for the latest sporting news with Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Thami. A very good afternoon from the sports desk. Now, some Club World Cup ticket prices have been lowered significantly thanks to the dynamic pricing, which is a mechanism used to lower or raise ticket prices based on demand. Now, the cheapest tickets to half of the Club World Cup group stage matches, which is 24 of the 48 matches being played, are under $36, all in fees before taxes. Now, FIFA has a $2 billion revenue target. It expects to generate from the FIFA Club World Cup, which also includes $1 billion already paid to live stream all 63 matches for free on their website as well as app, and another $500 million in marketing rights. Now, the other $500 million will come from hospitality rights as well as ticket sales, along with the $1 billion prize pool that will be paid by FIFA and divided among the 32 Club World Cup teams. FIFA is targeting to make $250 million in solidarity payments to other clubs as well as leagues around the world to further the game. FIFA also plans to pay each host city $1 million to support the community soccer projects in the future. Well, Manchester City have confirmed the signing of AC Milan midfielder Tijani Rangers on an initial fee of $56.5 million on a 5-year contract. Now, the Netherlands international is Pep Guardiola's fourth summer signing, with Ryan Ait-Nouri, who was signed on Tuesday. Marcus Belletini as well as Ryan Cherki have also joined the side. Now, Tijani, who's 26 years of age, was signed just in time to be eligible for this month's FIFA Club World Cup to be played in the USA and could potentially make his debut on the 18th of June against Wydad Casablanca of Morocco. Meanwhile, Sporting Lisbon have not received an offer for striker Victor Gyökeres, and there is no gentleman agreement for him to leave for $69 million. That's according to the club president Federico Varandas. Now, Sweden international Gorigos, who has been heavily linked with Manchester United as well as Arsenal, that's after scoring 97 goals in 102 matches during 2 seasons in Portugal. He has a $105 million release clause in his contract. It has also been widely reported that after staying at Sporting Lisbon during the European summer last year, he as well as Sporting Lisbon agreed that he would leave for $69 million. However, Varandas said the club's only promise to the player was that they would not demand his full release clause. And finally, we'll conclude with some golf news. The 125th US Open heads to the Keystone State with historic Oakmont Country Club hosting for a record 10th time. Now, the world number 1 Scotty Scheffler, coming off a win at the memorial presented by Workday, is now looking forward to his second major triumph of the year after earning the PGA Championship at Quail Hollow just a few weeks back. So Rory McIlroy captured his first major of the season, winning the Masters tournament to complete a career Grand Slam just a few months ago. The 2024 purse of the US Open is a record $21.5 million, which is the highest amongst golf's major championships, with the winner earning a cool $4.3 million. The winner will also take the 750 FedEx Cup points, if eligible, of course, to play for the Fed Cup title next year. And that's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. From markets to innovation, Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus, Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is exactly 4:37 Central African time. Now, South Africa's former Statistician General, Dr. Padi Lehotla, has poured water on suggestions that there's something wrong with how Statistics South Africa measures unemployment. This after one of the country's big 5 banks said a big part of the economy was left out, making the country's unemployment rate among the highest in the world. Lehotla says this is madness. Dimakatso Lishuro has the details.
The remarks come after outgoing chief executive of one of South Africa's largest banks, Gerrie Fourie, says the country's high unemployment rate would be around 10% if self-employed people and those employed in the informal sector were counted. South Africa's unemployment rate increased to 32.9% in the first 3 months of this year, according to data by the country's stats agency, Statistics South Africa. It showed that while unemployment increased in the formal economy, 17,000 jobs were created in the informal sector over the same period. Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Pax Dau told Parliament on Tuesday that there's an argument to be made about how the unemployment numbers are calculated.
But I also hold the view that there is a significant undercount, particularly if you take into account the informal sector. And in fact, it's something that we should all collectively be engaging in resolving, so that we're able to one, acknowledge the informal sector, but also reinforce the support mechanism that is a major contributor to employment in the country.
His Deputy Minister, Zuko Godlimpi, says something is statistically flawed with the accounting matrix by Stats SA.
The President and I made a similar point as what the CEO is saying. We didn't quite suggest that it should be a 10% thing, but we were making the point that there is something conceptually flawed with South Africa's statistical accounting matrix. Part of the reason why South Africa is known as having the highest level of unemployment compared to many other countries where the reality should be far worse is because we use a different statistical framing of what employment is. Now, of course, that approach has its own discontents, and it has been discussed at length with respect to other countries such as Nigeria and Mozambique and so on, about whether or not it doesn't overstate the importance of informal sector employment in determining the structural profile or functionality of an economy.
Former Statistician General Dr. Padile Hohla says this is madness.
Nowhere in the world what he says would be correct, given what we do to measure. They are comfortable in aggregating black misery and exploiting it and come with this kind of trash as measurement in order to allow politicians to hang up behind this rubbish. What statistics is that? It's immoral. They are politicians and they are opportunistic and they rely on this nonsense. Yeah. They have a statistician general in the country. They have a series that has been compiled from 2007 on a quarterly basis, a series that was every 6 months before 2007. And at one stroke of a random businessman, they want to undermine measurement and series of a nation. That's madness. It's very unflattering that we had to buy into that nonsense.
The government has not been able to reduce the unemployment rate because of, among other things, the lack of economic growth over the years. South Africa's economy has not grown over 2% in over a decade. In the first quarter of this year, it grew by 0.1%, and annual growth is expected to reach just over 1% this year. Tau told parliamentarians that his department was in the final stages of an industrial and growth strategy to grow the economy and prioritize transformation.
We should be able to share fairly soon what the proposals of the industrial policy are. It is currently going through various processes and reviews. In fact, yesterday I'm told it was at FOSAT, the Forum for South African DGs. I have confidence that, in fact, a lot of the proposals that have been put forward in relation to both the industrial policy and the inclusive growth path have the capacity to shift the needle on the dial. There is no doubt that we need to shift the needle on the dial, that growth has been lackluster, and that, in fact, as reflected.
But Lehohla is not convinced.
For as long as they don't accept the reality and they want false platforms to make them comfortable, they are going to fail.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Dimakato Leshoro in Johannesburg.
Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
We turn our focus now to Kenya, where the government has instructed tea factories to stop working with the Rainforest Alliance in getting ethical certification, as the costs involved in securing the ethical label just don't add up for the farmers. In a meeting following the suspension, the Tea Board of Kenya, TBK, the East African Tea Trade Association and private tea producers have resolved that the suspension of certification and audit processes for tea factories by Rainforest Alliance will remain in force pending a detailed review of its relevance, benefits and sustainability. For more on this, we joined this afternoon by the Secretary of the Independent Tea Producers Association of Kenya, Arnold Koch. A very good afternoon to you, sir. Welcome to Africa in Business. What is your take on the government's instructing tea factories to stop working with the Rainforest Alliance?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. The Independent tea producers, maybe I can just start by a small introduction of who we are. And it's a union of about 25 private tea factories, mostly family-owned businesses that operates in the western side of Kenya. When it comes to the Rainforest Alliance, the goal of the certification was a noble one. It was intended to bring a lot of positive change in the society. However, the implementation has been done in a way that is counterproductive to the cost of production within these factories. So, whereas we do not necessarily believe in cancellation entirely, it just needs to be relooked at how the implementation is being carried out.
And why is this certification important?
The basis of the certification was to bring ethics into the tea industry. So it is essentially to guide people on good agricultural practices, care for women's rights, humanitarian rights and all that. And so it was definitely necessary to have a certification just so that the ethical part of the business can be monitored.
So you do say that it was a progressive move?
It was a progressive move, yes. However, how it was implemented possibly did not align with the cost of production. So it ended up in a situation where factories were struggling to even meet the requirements, the audit requirements. And
maybe if you could take us through the main costs that you need to pay in order to get the Rainforest Alliance certification.
So it is pretty much an audit process. You have to undergo right from the farm level, that's the cleanliness of the farm and how the tea is being sourced all the way to the factory. So it is a full audit process. I think what ends up ballooning the cost is that this process has to take place every year, and you have to go through the audit, and that's where sort of the mismatch came about.
And who sets these regulations? Who sets the parameters as to how often the certification needs to be issued?
That has to come from the certification body itself, and it is primarily backed by the buyers with groups such as the Ethical Tea Partnership. These guys basically formulate the program, and then you're now supposed to align yourself with the certification requirements. So it's always a process, but
So what impact is this then going to have on the small scale farmers and on tea growers in Kenya?
Primarily, it is going to result in a situation where some of the things that were being looked at through the audit process might not be looked at. However, on the factory side, we might just say it evens the burden on the cost of production, because now you get a more that extra cost that you were paying to the certification body has been mitigated a bit.
How does that impact export? Is there a requirement from the export market for the certification?
Yes, because like I said, there are certain premiums that you were supposed to have gotten from being a certified factory. Now, one of the issues was that the premium wasn't being seen by the factories, and that's part of the reason why there was all this issue. So if it had been implemented the correct way, we would have these premiums, and this is now what the people would be missing out on. So if it's either a few US cents more for the tea that you're purchasing because you're compliant with the ethical requirements, perhaps, but those are the kinds of negative impacts that we're going to have.
And what are the solutions? Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, on the farmer side, we just expect a lack of compliance now. Some of the issues, such as the requirement for proper waste management in the farm level might be affected. The beauty of an annual audit process is that somebody was keeping track and seeing, like, are these things being followed? Are they being done in the right way? Now, if there's nobody following, we might end up in a situation where some of these things are ignored completely. And they were very helpful to the small scale community.
Certainly, and it sounds like it could lead to a regression in the industry as well, and in the quality of what is being produced. So what are the type of solutions that are being put on the table? How can this be circumvented, maintaining the costs while still keeping the certification?
So basically what you want to do is a full relook at how the certification is done, just to sort of eliminate the excess costs that were causing more harm to the industry than good. There has been talk of using a national government-initiated standard. For example, the Kenya National Bureau of Standards has a very comprehensive standard, but that's about implementation. You just need now a system that will ensure that the standard is actually being implemented the way, for example, Rainforest Alliance were doing it on the ground.
Well, thank you very much for that update. That's the Secretary of the Independent Tea Producers Association of Kenya, Arnold Koch. Thank you very much for your update this afternoon, sir. And now that conversation following... Thank you, sir. That conversation following the Kenyan government instructing tea factories in the country to stop working with the Rainforest Alliance in getting their ethical certification. That seemingly a financial burden on the farmers. But as Mr. Koch was pointing out, it is something that will lead to a regression in the industry, in the sense that standards already were being established and parameters being set there for certification. That takes us to exactly 4:50 Central African time. Do stay with us. This is Africa in Business.
Hi, I'm Thami Ngubeni, anchor of Africa in Business on Channel Africa, bringing you the African perspective.
And I'm Ashraf Garda, host of the National Pulse on SAFM, leading the conversations.
We've joined forces to bring you in-depth, exclusive G20 developments as we count down to the much-awaited inaugural G20 summit in South Africa, November 2025.
Tune in every Thursday at 16:20 Central African Time as we explore how this first G20 in Africa impacts the continent, from trade and innovation to climate and development.
It's a powerful crossover between Channel Africa and SAFM
as we bring you the G20 through an African lens.
The G20 in Africa
Global Summit.
An African Voice.
Je, una jambo lolote akilini mwako? Je, una shauku kuhusu masuala muhimu? Na je, una maoni ambayo unataka yasikike? Kweli, hili jukwaa ni la kwako. Piga simu au tuandikie kwenda WhatsApp namba alama ya kujumulisha 2760552594 na tutakupigia simu.
Mtangazaji wa habari zetu za Afrika Kusini mjini Johannesburg.
Hivyo unaweza kuwa mshirika kwenye matangazo yetu. Sio mazungumzo tu, ni fursa yako ya kuchangia maoni yako na kushirikiana na jumuiya ya wasikilizaji wanaotamani mtazamo wako. Tufuate kwenye mitandao ya kijamii. Tembelea tovuti yetu www.channelafrica.co.za na uwe tayari kushiriki na kuchangia maoni yako kwenye Channel Africa. Channel Africa, mtazamo wa Kiafrika.
Africa in Business. Africa in Business delivers key insights and real-time updates on Africa's growing markets with Thami Ngubeni. The African Perspective on Channel Africa.
Channel Africa.
This is Africa in Business on Channel Africa, keeping you abreast of all the business stories on the African continent. If you've got any stories from your region that you believe would be of interest to our listeners, both on the African continent and in the diaspora, Do send us your story leads to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. That's newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. This afternoon, we focused on a number of stories, including the tea market in Kenya. That's the latest conversation that we've just had with the Kenyan government instructing the tea factories to stop working with the Rainforest Alliance in getting that ethical certification. The annual audits also coming up as one of the cost barriers to making sure that the teas are compliant and of international standard. And this really there to impact the small scale farmers as far as their import is concerned. We also took a look at the golden handshake, what exactly that means and how it's used to lure some top clients and to lure some top talent rather into the companies. But how do you strike a balance between a golden handshake and ensuring that the company is not out of pocket due to the amounts that ought to be paid out when a mutual separation happens? We also took a look at the lithium industry in Zimbabwe being the continent's largest reserves, or having the continent's largest reserves of lithium, and the country finally saying that the beneficiation policy has to change. No longer should iron or lithium concentrates be exported out of the country, but instead mining companies need to establish processing and refining facilities within Zimbabwe itself. This is not new to Zimbabwe. In 2022, Zimbabwe did ban the export of lithium ore. So now moving that out to lithium concentrate. It is exactly 5 minutes to 5 p.m. Central African time, and we'll close up with this, a look at the hydrogen summit that's taking place in South Africa. It is South Africa and the African continent gearing up for the Africa Green Hydrogen Summit, which will be held in Cape Town this week. The event is preceded by a media launch held on Tuesday in Johannesburg. It was attended by South Africa's Minister of Electricity and Energy, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa. The organizers say that the event aligns with Africa's green industrialization and sustainability goals. Let's listen to this report by Sisi Sekhalo.
It's also expected to showcase the continent's potential as a global leader in green hydrogen production, unlocking investment opportunities and strategic partnerships. Relevant stakeholders in the sector, including government officials, energy ministers, international investors and energy experts, as well as industry leaders and policymakers, are also part of those expected. It is also a key G20-aligned event. The media launch in Johannesburg was attended by Minister of Energy and Electricity in South Africa, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa. He says green hydrogen is crucial for his country.
It's going to help us to transition what we call the hard-to-abate sectors, aviation and maritime. If you look at the amount of emissions, electricity is at the top, then it's transportation. There's very little with the current solution that we can apply on the transportation side, except that green hydrogen is going to give us that opportunity. What we need to resolve is the cost element. It's still cost prohibitive. It comes at a premium, but with the development of technology, I think that in a year, 18 months, we'll be in the right place. We have all the ingredients, if you like, the factors of production here. We can come in competitive, and it helps us to diversify our energy sources, to be able to build new skills, but also to beneficiate our mineral endowments and increase, if you like, a mining share of GDP.
That is Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, South Africa's Minister of Electricity. Well, that's how we come to the end of Africa in Business for today. Bonjour, Joël.
Bonjour, Thami.
What do you have in store for us on Vue d'Afrique?
Alors, sur Vue d'Afrique aujourd'hui, bonjour à tous les auditeurs, nous parlerons de la République démocratique du Congo. Le ministre de la Justice accusé de détournement des deniers publics. Nous parlons aussi de l'Afrique du Sud. Le président Ramaphosa annonce un dialogue national alors que le pays fait face à de nombreux défis, mais aussi, et ce pour les grands titres, le gouvernement de la République du Congo-Brazzaville annule son contrat de cession des terres au Rwanda.
Oh, merci beaucoup,
Merci,
Joël.
Thami.
That's all coming up for you on Vue d'Afrique, which starts at 5 p.m. That's how we come to the end of it for today. I'm Thami Ngubeni from myself, our producer Mabubu Lok, our technical producer Ndando Lutuli, and on social media Nzako Mashaba. Give yourself a splendid evening further. Over now to the French desk.